At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
Ampire. Hey babies, hey babies, hey babies. Hi everyone. Hi everyone. Happy Wednesday. How we doing today, everybody? What's up? What's up?
We are at an odd dry part of the sports calendar. We're like All-Star Week winter version over here.
Yeah.
This is bad. This is really bad.
Well, you're going to know it's bad because I'm going to start talking about baseball. So that'll be the that's the telling tale. I am doing a show tonight with London and Logan. We're having a little reunion show that'll go out on all the Commander stuff. I don't know when, probably. I would assume this week because they also don't have a lot going on right now. We're going to do we're going to get back together. We haven't had a gangs back together. What did we like about the season show? So we're going to do that one tonight. So you'll be seeing that in your internet feeds in the not too distant future. Anyway, let's talk baseball. I want to go back to what we were talking about yesterday because I don't think we spent enough time really on it, which was Mark Lerner speaking to Barry Svrluga. Barry, admits quickly, this is a brief conversation that I had with him, but he got 3 or 4 what I thought were very juicy quotes. Mark Lerner, famously, and it's noted in this piece, doesn't really talk to the media very much. So we talked about this yesterday, where not only did they say they're in it for the long haul, the for sale sign is down. The one thing that I kind of glommed onto was this whole idea where they were like, you guys took this a little out of context. We weren't necessarily going to sell the team. We were potentially looking at bringing in new partners and selling off a piece of the team, to which I would just say back to you, well, because you didn't speak to us for 2 years, we didn't know that. Right. And then so Barry doesn't bury them for saying that, but I will. Don't tell us you're taking things out of context when you don't speak to me. I don't know what you mean by this. And when you say the team's up for sale and you mean it one way, but you don't clarify what that means, don't get mad at me when I think you're trying to sell the team, but you're not doing it. So, I believe that all facets of an organization needs to speak to the public. It doesn't have to happen all the time, but they do. I will say this for Ted. I mean, he's gotten less and less and less speaking, but he does speak. It's not like he doesn't. He does communicate. He will write blog pieces. He used to do it all the time. Now he does it sometimes. He does press conferences, not all the time like he used to. Sometimes he will do a lot of interviews. He will take a lot of questions. Their GMs are available periodically throughout the year. Their coaches and players are available. The other major teams here for a while, the Commanders did not do that with ownership at all, and therefore there was a problem with communication with the public. And this is the Lerner's issue. Rizzo's available, Davey's available, but the ownership is not. And when you let something out there that suggests you might sell the team, but then don't communicate it, and then 2 years later go, psych, we're not doing that, don't tell me I took it out of context. Come on.
No, and I think this goes back to what I said yesterday, just piggybacking off of literally the last segment that we did together was, say what you want about the Wizards. The Wizards told me they were going to suck this year, and they have.
They communicated it, yes.
Correct. And they did it in a way of, what was the quote? Take in the small moments, because there might not be a lot of good ones this year, which was like, oh, wow, you guys are going to be really bad, which has never happened with that franchise before. But I respected, hey, here you are, a team that honestly just pulled the curtain down Wizard of Oz style and said, guys, this is who we are. And I was like, okay, finally, this is okay with me. With the Nets, they are still the Wizard of Oz curtain. We don't know who's really running the show at this point. I assume it is Mark Lerner, but at the same time, since Ted has passed away, they haven't done anything since he passed away, essentially. And we all know he was kind of, the grandfather of the franchise, essentially, that he would make some deals, whether Rizzo liked it or not, or was a facilitator of some of the deals, not, Mark Lerner. And so, yes, we assumed Mark was the guy running the show, but we necessarily didn't know that. We didn't know he was the guy writing the checks. We heard about some things internally, right, where some of the kids wanted to sell the team, or I guess in this case, their stake in the team. Maybe that's what it is. And I'm with you. When you don't talk, you let the streets talk for you. And you don't come out ahead of any of this, and there's all this speculation. And at the same time, too, your dad was the one that wanted to, spend the money and be a winner, and I haven't seen that, pretty much since the World Series. And I will say this: there's the one caveat with this, and it leads into the Soto trade, is that they won the World Series at the end of their window, and so that got wonky for a lot of people that said, "Oh my God, they're tearing it down." Their time was coming. It was the players that they moved that made you scratch your head. It was also the incompetence of the farm system that paired with a lot of moving on. It was their own incompetence that caused that. But at the same time, they haven't spent a dime since then, really, with a major deal. And that's what's concerning, because even when they were bad 10, 15 years ago, they were still handing out a contract every offseason at that point.
Okay, so let me go back initially, because I want to get to the team part of it, because we'll probably end up having a difference of opinion about this, because I've been angry at this team for a long time about the trades that they made, and was their window closing? Maybe not if they kept Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, and Juan Soto. I get it on somebody like Rendon and Scherzer. I totally get it. Those made sense to me. Anyway, let me just go back to the original point, which was when they said they put it up for sale, in whatever they meant by that, and they were purposefully vague about it. And I'll never forget last year at spring training at this time when he did write a letter to the fans, because he does when he opened spring training, and didn't even mention it in the letter. And I'm sitting there going, I can't. You're just ignoring the elephant in the room. We don't know if you're selling the team or not. And you're like, "Hi guys, it's spring training. Isn't that exciting?" And I'm like, "For who? We're all scared, buddy. We don't know what you're going to do. Is Ted going to own the team? Is some public wealth fund in Qatar going to own the team? We don't even know. What's going on here?" So from that point of view, again, he doesn't communicate enough personally. But I had heard when we were talking about this that the family did really love the team. And I was actually genuinely surprised when I saw that happen. And I wondered what was going on. Was this a impact from the pandemic, because a lot of commercial property, which is the family business, probably was depreciated in certain ways. There weren't a lot of people renting space any longer. Everybody was working from home. And, they're a real estate company, and they redeveloped the part of the city around Nats Park. Well, that part is, while not done, basically for all intents and purposes, done in terms of the investment in and around it. So I was like, are they trying to sell the team to buy the Commanders at the time? Because guess who needs new real estate? The Commanders need new real estate. And maybe that's how they're looking at it. I couldn't quite figure it out, other than I know people who know the family relatively well, and none of them were sure, maybe some of them were I don't really want to run it, and I'll sell my stake in the team if that's what it comes down to, and we own the majority part of it. Well, then I'm still part of it. I would get that. But I had heard they loved the team. And so I was genuinely surprised when I saw that they were selling it, because I'm like, why would they do that? They love it. They want to be a part of it. But then comes the other part, which is, you are going to have to be literally the owners of the team. And one of the things that he said was, it's not the time to get high-priced players right now. We're just not ready for it. And he cited back to the Jason Worth example, which was kind of the first franchise-changing big free agent signing that they made at the time when they finally had a team that looked like it was going to be competitive for a period of time. And they're saying, we're going to repeat that methodology here, and we just don't think it's the right time. And then he cited Mike Rizzo told us, we think next winter is probably the right time. And I'm sitting there going, okay, but the hard part to understand that if you're a fan of this sport is that you can spend whatever you want, whenever you want. It does not matter. There is no time is right. This isn't the NFL where you have to kind of hit the window to make the big splashy move to bring them onto the team to try to take them over the top. Talent is talent in baseball, and the price is the price, and you're allowed to do this at any point in time, and it doesn't have a ramification on this. There is no salary cap. So there is no, you can't rely on that to say we can't do this because we don't think we can build the right way. Sure you can. You're just choosing not to. And I, on some level, agree. I also don't think this team is quite ready to win, but I actually don't know what they would do if you added an infusion of talent to it. So I'm a little stuck in the middle right now, because I keep looking at their outfield all of a sudden, and I go, you know what? There is a possibility that their Jaden Daniels is standing out there somewhere, and if you threw a couple of really good players out there with them, like the Commanders did this year, who knows? But you're not willing to do that at this point. So that's where I'm stuck on them a little bit.
No, I'm with you. And it's worth reminding the Jason Worth signing was a complete overpayment, too. It's not like they made some savvy move with Jason. He got 7 years, $128 million, and the whole league balked at them when they made that deal. But even they came out.
Joke now.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's
Joke
pennies,
now.
right? They came out and they basically were like, we know we overpaid him. We want to tell you that we're here and that we want this leadership and this culture shift. And that's what Worth was. Worth was never this amazing player. I don't know if he might have made one All-Star game in his entire time here. If he did. He was often injured, but he was the leader of the clubhouse for the most part, right? And so that was a 7-year commitment. They signed him in 2010. They didn't make the playoffs until 2012. So they were still 2 years away when they signed him. So you're telling me if you're going to repeat this process, you're not 2 years into it yet? Like, that's a little bit jarring. Now, I get it. Things have changed. You're not handing out 7-year contracts to, just baseline starting outfielders. I understand. But at the same time, I'll go back to what I said yesterday. Jason Bregman got 3 years, $120 million. That's not a lot of money in baseball these days. They need a third baseman. That's the type of leader that you want in the clubhouse. I get it. You used to play for the Astros, whatever. But if you wanted to go ahead and just infuse the locker room a little bit, guess what is also a thing now too? The wild card. It's easier to make the playoffs now when you have a more around 500 record. Like, that could have pushed them to win a wild card spot. So that's where I'm at here too, is you could have actually accelerated the process a little bit, go on a playoff run with one player, or at least tell everyone we're ready to go. And they're not doing that at all. And I here's the other thing. I get they're at a crossroads right now. They have all these young pitchers. They need to figure out who's going to shuffle under, and then you can sign somebody, right? But as far as position players go, they need help there. And you know what? It's the MLB. You can trade that contract. Somebody would take that contract from you if it didn't work a year or two in, because teams are willing to take on that salary at least.
They're not even bargain shopping. They're just not shopping.
Yeah, right.
They're just not shopping. There's something about, like, well, they had this, you were talking about this yesterday, where they had this internal budget you could go spend. And then the word came out that Rizzo didn't even spend that because I guess he just didn't even like what was on the market at that price point.
Sure. Yeah.
At that price point. That price point that they're talking about doesn't get you a game-changing player. That price point allows you to do a little bit of shopping to try to work around the margins. They're not going to win working around the margins. And time will tell if the time is ever right for them to go and get high-priced players again. I would love for them to have a homegrown World Series team. That would be lovely. That is rare. And I got to be honest with you. I look at this one right now and I go, that ain't it. Like, maybe this guy James Wood turns out to be great. Maybe Dylan Cruz turns out to be great. All the other players that they've brought up through this system, none of them are the superstar that's leading them there. That's in my opinion, right? I've been saying this for a couple of years. Like, I don't see it. And when you try to sell me that and this is what he said too. He said, we are very close, basically saying there's a good team coming soon. He said that. Like, really? Because I'm not sure about that. I think that hinges on Wood and Cruz being exactly what you think they are. And if they are, great. I'll shut up and stop talking about it. But if they aren't, if one of them's good and the other one is, pretty good, which may or may not be the case, then you have to prove to me that you are going to go spend. And so that goes back to, when is the time actually right for you to do this? And I'll wait for your answer for the next 3 years, because you clearly aren't going to talk to me about it.
Right. Well, and the other side of this too is they're taking long enough that some of these contracts are coming up. Like CJ Abrams, you're going to have to hand him a new deal soon. You're going to have to make a decision about him. Like,
that's a tough one off of what happened last year now.
I agree. Like, he's got to play this year, play it out. And like, I'm okay. Like,
show up and be a professional. Like that. That's, like, I know he's a good player. I don't think he's a great player, but I also don't want to hear any more casino tales at 8 a.m. with him on a road trip. Like,
absolutely.
Sorry. Like, I know you guys are losing a lot, and I'm sure that that's frustrating, but there's professionalism and there's not professionalism. And if you want me to give you your 7-year whatever millions deal, then I need to believe that you're going to be a professional for this team.
No, absolutely. And on Abrams, like, I lean towards he probably has earned that Braves type extension where you buy out a couple of years of the last year of arbitration and you make him one of your players. But is he willing to sign on for that? And are you willing to play ball with him? Because last time I checked, this team also never re-signs their own players. It has only happened with literally 2 players. It's Ryan Zimmerman and it's Steven Strasburg. That's it. Besides some 1-year deals with some older guys, They literally have never re-signed their own people. So you're
Yeah.
also like, this is the problem with the Nationals. You are telling me that the good team is coming soon. But once again, your track record has told me you literally don't hold on to your own talent ever. Like, that is a legitimate track record. So how do I trust what you're doing is going to happen in time that CJ Abrams walks for nothing? Or that when James Wood or Dylan Cruz, I know we're a long ways away, that they're also going to walk because you don't want to play this game here. Therein lies the biggest problem with being a Nationals fan and covering this team these days. You cannot trust what they're saying because they also have literally never built their team up by re-signing their own people. And here's the thing, I will say this, like, outside of the Soto trade, which was completely not what they normally do, right? But they were never in that sweepstakes to get that contract. They, for the most part, had been right when it came to way back in the day with Ian Desmond and Jordan Zimmerman and all of those types of players. They were right to let them walk for the price. But you know what? They had somebody ready to go in the farm system. They had Anthony Rendon ready to go. They signed Max Scherzer. We haven't seen that replacement happen in the last 5, 6, 7 years. And that's what worries me here. They're not so good they can afford to let all of this talent go, unchecked. And that's what worries me here. They have not been as good as they were before with scouting and drafting players. That's a whole other conversation. But that's why it's hard to trust this franchise right now, because you're telling me a good team's coming soon. And then I'm saying, when are you dismantling it? Whether it's by trades or just letting them walk in free agency.
I don't see those on the margin moves that were home runs by Rizzo either. That used to be a hallmark of how he put this thing together, where he would maneuver things around. He would find these almost diamonds in a rough, and they would turn out to be really good players for them that would either star for them or be flipped for other things. And he looked like a genius with these moves. I don't see a lot of that anymore. So when they keep talking about, like, we've done this before, we'll do this again, I don't see the hallmarks of it like I used to. And also the price point of all the players, like, go back to this original one that we're talking about, the Jason Worth, that contract is laughable now. 7 for $128 for a really good player. That would be a deal. Like, we just said Bregman got 4 for $120 and that was a deal, right? Like, or 3 for $120. That was a deal. Like, the price points changed. What I don't know is, are they willing to meet the price points any longer? And proof suggests they are not, that they are extremely reluctant to do so. Then I want to go back to something you said earlier, and I know we've had just a difference of opinion for a few years about this, which is what frustrates me about the Nationals. Like, their window was closing when they won the World Series. Sure, with the exception of Harper was already gone because they couldn't retain him. Turner and Soto were still on the team when they decided to move away from both of them. And all three of these players are still in primes of their career. So I would argue that maybe the window was changing in and around them because Scherzer got older. And I think they did the right thing even at the time, I thought they did the right thing with Rendon. Unfortunately, the wrong thing was Strasburg, but I don't blame them for re-signing him off of the World Series year with those 2 contracts up. If you were going to make a choice, 10 out of 10, I would have done Strasburg. In hindsight, you don't do either, but you don't really know that, right? In hindsight, you don't do either one of them. But then there are the young generational players that have been wearing this uniform that they just decided that they either couldn't retain or decided they didn't want to pay the price to retain. That's the cost of doing business. It's the cost of doing business. And this is the part of this now. If you're going to rely on saying, well, we did this with Jason Worth and we'll do it again, really? Because the next Jason Worth is a $300 million player, not a $120 million player. Are you willing to do that? And until they do, I don't believe them at all.
No, I 100% agree. They haven't made this move in a long time. I'm trying to remember the last big contract they handed out, and it was Patrick Corbin. And this team has never hesitated to hand out big money to pitchers, but they were also in the middle of a window when they were handing money out to pitchers. When they signed Corbin, when they signed Max Scherzer, they were always in talks with whoever the best pitchers were on the market. They haven't made that signing in a while. And look, I get it. They have all this young pitching, and they're going to try to figure out who actually fits this season. And I'm willing to hear you out on that one, because if you have a plethora of pitching, you can actually move some of it for some pieces that you need.
Sure.
I get that. Like, I'll let that one go.
I'll hear that one out too. Yes.
But at the same time too, though, having too much pitching has never been anybody's problem. Like, you can have a log jam a little bit and figure it out because people get hurt, whatever. And so I'm with you at that too. Like, I haven't seen this move that restores faith that the old Nationals way is coming back, where they complement, a big signing here and there. I haven't seen it.
I haven't seen it either. I don't buy it. The Mets are like wild spenders, and until proven otherwise, especially off the Soto deal, they don't seem to be changing their ways. And they went from, remember last year, they went from the reset year because of all those deals that they made that blew up in their face, and they ended up burning money in a trash can just to get out of some of them. They weren't supposed to be good last year, and they ended up in the playoffs anyway. Why? Because if you want to win in this sport, you actually have to spend money, and they have an owner that's more than willing to do so. The Phillies have an owner that's more than willing to spend a lot of money on players. The Braves are very good at lining up their guys, tying them down to contracts in advance. Washington doesn't do any of these things with the exception of Keibert Ruiz. He's the one person that they did this with. So they're not following currently the model that the Braves are following, and they're certainly not going in the direction, and I'll believe it when I see it, that they're going to be the Mets or the Phillies. Guys, you're in the wrong division. You're in the wrong division, or you better be unbelievable at developing your talent that you find. You better be unbelievable at it, because your methodology, to me, is fourth place. That's how I look at it.
The thing with the Mets, too, they weren't supposed to be quote-unquote good last year. They were still top 5 in payroll. So it tells you they messed around and went on a run because they spent for talent.
They spend for talent. Therefore, it erases a lot of the mistakes that you make. Welcome to a sport that doesn't have a salary cap. If you have a willing ownership group that's willing to do something like that, good luck competing with it.
Yeah, and to your point, too, like I almost feel like this is the Nationals conceding, almost being like, oh, well, we're the 4th place team in the division. Why should we even try? And I'm like, guys, you still have to go play the games. You still can be a thorn in these guys' side. Like, that's what I don't really understand here is we've seen the Braves make some mess ups and not make the playoffs some years. We've seen it with the Dodgers where they spend a bunch of money and they don't go on the run. Everyone thinks they're going to go on a run. Granted, I think they're like the juggernaut right now. But then you also look at the teams in the division. The Phillies are perennial World Series, like right on the cusp there, and they don't even finish off their runs either. Like there is a way for you to go about this. And honestly, go look at how you won the World Series. You were very talented, but you still had Asdrubal Cabrera starting out there every game. You still had Howie Kendrick starting every single game. Like you had Yan Gomes and Kurt Suzuki platooning all the way to the World Series. Like you had holes in the lineup and you still won a championship. Like it's almost like they can't see their own way of winning, that you can stack yourself up in a way to be complimentary, and they just haven't bothered with it.
Yeah, they're like, I just, in this day and age, now that the Mets are owned by who they're owned by, and the Phillies have this team where they're willing to spend, and they have a group that's going to be very dynamic and offensively explosive, at least for a few more years, and the Braves have a very good setup with what they've done here. I don't believe that they can win being the plucky underdog. Like I just don't even see that. Like I don't see a path to it. Like if they were in a different division, like say they were in the NL Central, I could actually buy into that a little bit and go, you know what? Because that's kind of what the Brewers do. It's what the Pirates are begging for. It's what the Reds do. The Cardinals and Cubs will spend money, but they haven't spent it wisely in recent years. Like I'll actually hear out, like you have a shot with this method of what you're doing, not where we are. We're with Gigantor. And if you're not going to play in that, like, then good luck. Could you have a one-off season where your team is pretty good and the others are a little bit down and you sneak into the wild card? Sure. But like, if you're not going to swim in the waters of paying for big time talent because the other teams in your division are, you're not going to do the on the margin trades that make you a lot better, that make you the resident genius of the sport. And you're not going to get ahead of contracts and pay people like the Braves do. Then what exactly is your plan? That's what I'm trying to figure out, because I don't see the path. And then I look at this team and I go, all right, you traded away generational players because you're going to get the next generational players. I don't see them. And maybe I will this year. I am open that James Wood and Dylan Cruz are that. And if they are, fine, great. I'm happy about it. But the other pieces that they got, all of them, none of them are superstars. None of them. They might be good players, but none of them are the ones that are going to lead you to a World Series, period.
But the problem is that we get put right back into the paradox. If James Wood or Dylan Cruz or both of them are very good, the countdown starts of, well,
Correct.
if they're really this good, are you going to re-sign them? Like,
yes. And the Soto thing was like, if James Wood is hitting 50 home runs a year, he's our Aaron Judge. Let's say he's doing that. Like, the countdown clock starts tomorrow.
Yes.
Because we know, and now we've already seen this, there is recent history of we will preemptively trade a superstar away.
That's right. No, exactly right. And like, that's where it lies the biggest problem here. Like, the Bryce Harper one, I'll hear you out. Like, I think the Learners, that was their line in the sand of like, we're not into this $400 million contract business. They offered Soto, one that was literally half of what he ended up getting essentially with the Mets. But I understand that big one, but at the same time, you went, okay, that's your line now. So now when you get these generational players, you don't want to hand out these contracts. You don't want to hand out the Trey Turner contract where it's like you win with guys like that. And so, yeah, you're stuck now. You're stuck now in this cycle of, okay, even if we get good players, are you going to hold on to them? And the answer is honestly no. Like the track record is no. So it's unfortunate.
Bryce Harper and Juan Soto will be in the Hall of Fame wearing other jerseys.
Correct.
That's frustrating. It's really frustrating to see that.
Trey Turner too.
Trey Turner is a possibility too. Yeah. Scherzer, I'm okay with. Like, go ahead, finish your career in Toronto, get whatever you can. I'm totally fine with that. All right, let me ask one other quick question here, because I thought this offseason was surprising with new ownership with the Orioles. Where's their Jason Worth? Because I know what happened last year to that team. There clearly was something up in that locker room. They're too talented to have nosedived the way that they had. They were a prime candidate for, you know what? Go find a veteran who knows what he's doing, pay him a little bit of money, bring him into this locker room, hopefully drag Gunnar Henderson and Adley Rutschman into more leadership quality things, and turn this thing around. But they didn't do that. Then they lost Corbin Burns, which sounds like wasn't really their fault, because it sounds like he really wanted to just pitch in Arizona. So, I mean, what are you going to do about it? He wanted to live there. There's nothing you could do. Well, they didn't really replace him. So they lost their ace. They didn't put any veteran leadership in the locker room. They are, quote unquote, running it back with a, quote unquote, I think, worse pitching staff than they had a year ago. Explain to me how this is going to end up with a better result this year.
The O's get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because there's a bunch of guys we haven't heard of that they're going to call up, and they're going to end up being really good players. Like,
they do have the craziest young lineup in baseball too.
Correct. And there's also guys that haven't cracked that lineup yet that we haven't seen, and they're going to call up some guy in the middle of July, and everyone's going to go, oh, that's the number 2 prospect in all baseball. And you know what I mean? Like, so they get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. I'm with you. The thing is, Mike Elias plays this game where I think he's going to get some veterans or a veteran off the scrap heap. I don't think he's going to give out a big deal, because the Orioles at least can play the card of, we have so much young talent, we're not handing out these big contracts for when we have to sign some of these guys. Like, David Rubenstein did speak with the media, and he did literally say out loud, I don't have any restrictions on paying, but then later clarified by saying, we do want to turn a profit, we do want this to be a good business, and we do have good players here. So I think he was kind of setting the deck chairs up of saying, I hear you. We have all this young talent. I got to sign Rutschman. I got to sign Henderson. Sit tight for a little bit while we get this payroll thing correct. And I think he's gonna do what's right by this franchise. I think they're a little bit more of, let's see what some of these young guys can do. They get a little bit more of the benefit of the doubt. I think.
Well, like, unlike the Nationals, I buy the group of players that they have on the field right now, and I actually think it's a little bit on them what happened late in the season. You guys are better than that. So, show me. Play better than that. But their pitching staff's worse today.
Correct. No, you're right.
I do think that they needed a little bit of whatever it is, veteran leadership in there to try to fix whatever it is, to be the extra manager on the field and say, this is how winning teams act. They needed their worth. They didn't do either one of these things. So will it be better? Maybe. Do they just get along better? Maybe. Like, does the season not get so long on them this time? Maybe. But it is all maybe. And the Yankees have a juggernaut up there, similarly to what the Nationals are dealing with. You have a group that will spend, and if they make a mistake, they'll just spend more. So you're dealing with that every single year. It's the business of the sport, whether you like it or not. It's just the way it is.
The equivalent of Bregman for me as a Nationals fan, the equivalent for the Orioles, I think, should be Max Scherzer. Like, he got a 1-year couple $1 million deal with Toronto, that would have been a guy I think you bring in that clubhouse that
Yes.
he's not a top line starter by any means, but he could be your third, fourth, fifth starter. I don't think
He's
cares.
a professional.
I just think he wants the ball.
He's
every
a winner.
5 days.
He's a professional.
Yeah, I think he wants the ball every 5 days. He's going to show you an intensity that team hasn't seen. That's their signing that I looked at and went, man, he would have actually been good for that clubhouse to teach them, how to kind of live day to day, essentially. But when it does come to the Orioles too, like, they have all these prospects. They have this farm system. I'm not as worried about them not signing people because I think when they need to, actually make that big signing, they're going to go ahead and do it.
Yep. All right, let me take a quick break. Bram wants to show ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.
Get the Angel Reese special at McDonald's now. Let's break it down. My favorite barbecue sauce, American cheese, crispy bacon, pickles, onions, and a sesame seed bun, of course. And don't forget the fries and a drink. Sound good? Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
At participating restaurants for a limited time. If your football team had one option in their playbook, the results probably wouldn't be great. The same could be said for your investments. SIBO index options like SPX and XSP can help expand your investing strategies with cash settlement and potential tax advantages. If you're ready for a more dynamic game plan, head to betterwithoptions.com. SIBO, life is better with options. Your investments could be too. There are risks associated with SIBO company products. Review the disclosures and disclaimers at SIBO.com/US_disclaimers.
All right, welcome back. My man, Daniel Jeremiah, puts out his second mock draft. And I'm going to get to the Commanders first on it because I don't think when you're picking 29th, I think it's very hard to project really anything. And this is, I'm glad we're in this spot, but it's a very unusual spot for us. We haven't picked this low in forever. And so to sit there and guess who's going to be available to them at 29, I think is very, very hard to do. I think, you're more inclined to get the top 15 right or close to it, minus trades or whatever you believe trades will be. But this is where they have them. And it is nice to see. And I'm not surprised by this. I do think that they will, if they stay at 29, go in one of three directions, which is need, which is offensive line, wide receiver, or edge rusher. And in this case, they've got him. He's got them going with this linebacker out of Alabama, the edge rusher, whose name is Jahad Campbell. And he describes him as really more of a linebacker, but kind of the hybrid player that is used and can be, as in his words, elite pass rusher. And that smells of right up the alley that they're going to go. Because if they aren't going to be able to pull off a trade for Myles Garrett, and I've looked at the edge rushers that are available, are you going to, depends on the price point, overpay for an older Khalil Mack? These are positions that are not typically available. Are you going to overpay for Josh Sweat? I doubt it. That doesn't seem like something that they would do. And I don't think that he alters the edge rush for you in a way that's worth the price point of what you're doing. Then this is your choices here. And at 29, this smells right to me. I think they're going to bridge gap receiver in the free agency period because there's a long list of players that you could go look at. And we went through a couple of them yesterday, like I've earmarked Godwin if he's healthy. Slayton is of interest, but there's a lot of others on that list. Professional wide receivers that you could bring in here that will upgrade the talent if you're not going to if you're not going to swing for T. Higgins or you're not going to draft one late. Edge rusher, if you look at the list, you're going to be hard pressed to find a bunch of names that you're going to think is worth the money to do it. So this has to be addressed. And this makes sense to me. So I think Daniel Jeremiah is kind of on to something here, that if this person is available or someone like him is available, this stinks of the direction in the draft that I think this team will go. Try to find help on the defensive side of the ball in terms of edge rush and see if you get lucky and get somebody who's an impact player early.
No, I mean, I think no one's going to complain if they go trenches first pick, whether that's offensive lineman, an edge rusher, or a tackle. The other thing I will say is
the best tackles will be gone because that's the way it is,
sure,
right?
Yeah. I think one thing it is worth noting about where they're picking is we've seen this in years past where some teams love a certain player and they'll trade up at the back half of that or the back picks of that first round because they want that fifth year option with guys. So I will say, I think Adam Peters is going to be working the phones. trade down, get more second-round picks or some mid-round picks because they had to move some in the Lattimore trade. It wouldn't surprise me if they go that route and just grab more picks, because what are the two positions that are deep in this draft? It's D tackle and it's running back. Last time I checked, this team needs both of those. So I don't think Adam Peters is also going to hesitate to trade down here. I'm with you, though. If they do stick around here, you go with the best edge rusher on the board or the best lineman, offensive lineman. I don't care if it's a guard or a tackle at that point. Build up the trenches with the top picks, because that's where the top talent is at that point.
I think this is a very weak draft. I think we're starting to see this. Daniel Jeremiah even like kind of mockingly said when he released this, I actually have 3 running backs in my first round, which ought to tell you that the talent across the board, the high-end talent, isn't there. Running backs typically don't go that high unless you're a special player like Bijan Robinson a couple years ago, where you will go really high because you're a special player. And Ashton Genty will go very high to somebody who needs a running back because he looks like he's a special player, and that's different. But when you get down beyond that and you start picking running backs late in the first round, it tells you that the talent pool at all the other premier positions that are, vaunted in the draft, the tackle position, the edge rush position, even now to some degree the wide receiver position, because you want the 50-year option because they're paid a lot of money now, or a good corner now, like that must just not be there. So I think this is an unusual draft. And I'm with you here. Like, if someone's making a call for 29 because they want the extra year of service to be able to use, then I think that that's an Adam Peters special where you can actually drop back maybe even just a few picks. Yep. Last year, I think the 32nd overall pick was traded at the last minute because of that reason, partially because of that reason, right? I think the Panthers jumped up and got Xavier Legette because they just wanted to get him before it got around to the second round. So I think that's possible. But I do think that he's on to something here position-wise. Washington, I believe, will address wide receiver in free agency. It may be not, it's not going to be the top tier one. It's not going to be Higgins any longer. I don't think anybody's getting him. And I doubt it's Diggs or Cooper, whose numbers are still going to be very high, I think. Unless there's a deal to be had for Cooper, I'd be surprised. I don't think Diggs is going to settle for some one-year, $10 million deal. Like, I don't think that's going to happen. And therefore, I don't think he's the person that I would go after. But there are a lot of names. The wide receiver free agent list is very, very deep. You're going to be able to get 2 of them probably at a pretty good rate and upgrade the talent level overall. So, sure, if the Ohio State receiver is there at 29, it's going to be hard to turn that down just from a talent perspective. Assuming he's not, you know what? I think you bridge your way here with a couple of veteran receivers, maybe draft one in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th round, whatever it may be. I also agree they're going to get a running back, but you don't have to pick. I guess if you want Genty and you think he's that much of a difference maker, you could do it. But oftentimes in the draft, you can find really good value 2nd, 3rd, 4th round on running backs, or even after that. And so I don't think there's any need to do anything early about that one. And then we're just got to figure out what the offensive line looks like. It all reads to me that, through all of this, it is going to be hard for them to address really everything. But if they do end up with an edge rusher and it turns out to be a really good one, and they get their running back later and they fill the roles of wide receiver, we're getting close. We're getting close. I think we might have to kind of patchwork the offensive line again, but we're getting close.
No, this is exactly why I don't think the move for Garrett is what they want to do. I think they want a player like Garrett. Who doesn't want a player like Garrett? But they just have too many holes right now. And as I said, in a weak draft, the 2 biggest positions with the most players are running back and D tackles. They need one of each of those. And so if it's a deep draft, at least in those 2 positions, they can address that. That's perfectly fine with me. And look, this is what I keep saying about the Garrett thing. I think it's a year too early. Like, I could see them doing this next year, but this year, I just think there's a little bit too much that they need to add across the entire roster too. Because I said this last year and I'll say it again. I'm worried about the depth of this team again. Like, yes, they've got to turn over their starters, let alone find some backups for them too. Like, the depth has got tested multiple times last year, and it's going to get tested again this time around. How do you get more players cheaply? It is the draft. I just don't see it happening for a big move.
Yes. If they don't go with like an edge player like that, then offensive line feels like almost a no-brainer to me that that's the direction they'll go late in the first round if they stay there, whether it's tackle or guard. And really where the depth really showed up was the offensive line. Like, they had to go through a number of different backups. The backups, it was a drop-off. I mean, it was a significant drop-off. So They've got a long way to go. I mean, they really do. Roster-wise, they have a long way to go. I think number 5 masks over a lot of your problems. You found this out. I think their roster's in a lot better shape in other spots than I initially thought it was. Like, assuming Jeremy Chin is back, I do like their safeties right now. You know, if Marshawn Lattimore is going to propel back to the level that he was pre all the injuries, then I actually think like the corner position isn't as in dire straits as people describe it as. I think they need another one for sure, but it's not in the position that it was if he's going to be that. The defensive tackles are going to be interesting to watch because, you know, with John's contract, I think a decision has to be made. How do they feel about Johnny Newton being a frontline starter? Do they just go through another year with Allen because why not? You're like, are you better without him? I think they have to ask that question. They need to answer edge rush, but the depth part of it was on the offensive line. And I think receiver, they're going to be able to figure it out. And honestly, 5 elevates people. See, like that's a difference thing for him. Yep. So I don't think you need to go out there and go get the Brandon Ayuk's of the world right now. He elevates people. You need an upgrade in talent, maybe an upgrade in consistency. And I think you can get that because of what I'm seeing in free agency. So I'm very bullish that they're going to answer that question in free agency. What's the wide receiver room look like? I bet they sign 2 of them. That would be, and bring maybe Zacchaeus back. Then all of a sudden you're going to feel very differently. If they get one that's of another tier, like a Godwin, I think we're all going to feel very different about the wide receiver room if they do something like that. I think running back can be addressed in the draft. So it's offensive line that I have a funny feeling is the one that's not going to be answered fully in this offseason.
No, I mean, that sounds about right. Like they weren't going to be able to address everything, right? I mean,
no,
and that's a position when you have a good front line.
Up that way. I mean, if there were like 8 tackles that were going to go in the first round, I'd go, well, they'll get one of them, you know, like, right. So.
And you look at it, though, like that's a position right now that's at a premium. We saw this a couple of years ago with D tackle, right? Remember, D tackles were getting traded that they were so in demand by some players. Offensive linemen now are kind of like edge rushers. You don't move them at all unless you absolutely have to. And usually you get a solid draft pick back in return, you know, if you do end up trading them. So, yeah, they're not going to be able to address everything. That's been my mantra pretty much since the season ended was, I think they hold on to their draft picks because it just gives them more maneuverability around this roster that will be turned over once again, like it was last offseason.
Yeah, Ronald like this. In year 3, that's when things are really going to take that leap, at least roster-wise. You know, they play their cards right here. They are set up for a big offseason year 3, and maybe it fills more of those roles, but they'll have to hit a couple more home runs in the draft, and they'll have to do some more bridges here in free agency to get around to it. All right, let me take a quick break. We'll go through the rest of his mock draft in a moment. Ray Buster Show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first, like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
When the game tips off, the NBA action is just beginning on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because FanDuel is your home for NBA live betting. However you want to play, now is the perfect time to join. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. 21 plus and present in Virginia. First online, real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued is non-withdrawable bonus bets which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right, welcome back. More from Daniel Jeremiah. I love his work on the NFL Network, his mock draft. He's got the top pick being, and I'm not surprised by this, Abdul Carter. Tennessee's got a weird decision to make. Do they stick with Will Levis? Do they try to get a different quarterback, Aaron Rodgers, maybe? Like, do they go in that direction? Because, and I actually agree with this, I don't think that there's a quarterback coming out, no offense, Cam Ward, that I think warrants this. So I think I agree with Daniel here from what I've seen so far. I think he's the best player in the draft. I think you just take the best player in the draft. You don't reach for a quarterback. Take a guy who's albeit a sure thing. He is, so you take him. And I don't know how their fans are going to feel about it, but I actually think if that's the way it goes, it's the right thing to do.
No, I think you do this too because you don't want to be stuck in mid quarterback hell for 3 years after
Correct.
this either. Like you just, I'm with you. Like I loved Cam Ward's quote. Hope it motivates him. I hope he stays motivated. But at the same time, quarterback's one that we don't mess around with anymore in the draft. We kind of just know. We kind of just know. Yeah, exactly. We kind of just know when these guys are worth it. Like I think you go to last year and you go to the top 3 picks were all going to be quarterbacks because they were all that damn good. You go back to the draft where was it the Sam Howell draft that there was barely one? I think there's one quarterback.
Kenny Pickett was the only first round pick that year.
Right. Where and
even that was a reach. People were saying he wasn't a first round pick.
And guess what? They were right. They were right. Look at how that draft shook out. So I think we've got it down to a science now that maybe we don't know who the best quarterbacks are, period. But I think we know the tiers at this point of, if there's not really a number one in this draft, I'm not taking them either. I'm rolling the dice with a veteran, or I'm going to suck again next year to try to get another one. And I know no one likes to use the word tank, but I don't want to get stuck. I don't want to get stuck with one of these guys for 3 years is what happens.
I think my mantra now with the draft is at literally every other position, I can be convinced on someone that I like and maybe not love and be convinced that I'll end up loving them, but not at quarterback.
Yep.
Not at quarterback. If you're just doing it because you think you need to fill the position, but you don't love this person or actually really think they're going to be good, it's just going to set you back because you have to go through the whole cycle of 2 to 3 years to find out he's the wrong guy.
And it also, it's not only the cycle, it then becomes, oh, the coach gets fired. Well, who are we bringing in to make sure that he gets better? Or who are we surrounding him with to make him better? And all of a sudden you are just so caught up with one player that we all kind of said wasn't going to be good. It alters your whole entire franchise for more than the 3 years, honestly.
Now, listen, it's not a cure-all because the Giants truly indeed love Daniel Jones, and he just didn't end up being the guy. But at least organizationally, they were behind him, and they were not the whole time going, we just needed a quarterback, and we kind of liked him, and we took a shot on him. That'll never work out. Cam Ward, you mentioned in Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft, he has him going number 2 to Cleveland. So he would be the answer to Deshaun, who I don't think is ever going to play again for the Browns. They'll have to figure out his contract over the next couple of years, which I guess there's nothing to figure out. They're just going to pay him unless they can figure out a way out of it. But he's not going to play again. And so Cam Ward would be the future. And so his threat works because he said, if you don't pick me, beware. So I guess the only team he'll be mad at is Tennessee for the rest of his life.
Well, and to this point, though, this one actually I like for Cleveland. Cleveland's got a good enough team that if you drop Cam Ward in there, I'm not going to say he's going to kill it or whatever, but they're pretty set at a lot of other positions. I'm not going to say like they go on a run, but I think you do, if you are Cleveland, roll the dice on another quarterback here because Joe Flacco got them to the playoffs 2 seasons
100%.
ago. So, this is actually one where, I'm okay with it. But I think also Cleveland drafts him knowing full well we might not make it through this contract if he's not good enough.
I'll tell you what, too, if you're that front office, and here's one whether you love him or not, do you go to Myles Garrett and say, we're picking the best quarterback in the draft? You saw what Jaden Daniels did a year ago. We have a good team here. Just calm down. We're going to be fine. Yeah. Right. And, I felt like it's hard for them to trade Myles Garrett because I think perceptually, how do you go to your ownership and say, we screwed up all these other things, therefore our best player doesn't want to be here anymore, so we're going to trade him. And then, but please trust us with these next decisions for the franchise's future. I don't think that's a good sell. So this actually makes sense to me. And it goes back to whether they like him or love him, they may go this way because they need a quarterback. He would be the best one off the board, in my opinion, too. I don't think, personally, that he's going to be Caleb or Jaden or Drake May. Personally, I don't think so. He can prove me wrong, too. He can prove everybody wrong. But I think in Cleveland's case, this is desperation, and it's partially saving face, moving forward, and keeping everybody excited to be in Cleveland, including Myles Garrett.
No, I think this is a good roll of the dice. I know we just talked about, hey, don't take the guy if you don't think he's going to be good. But this is actually a situation where I think there's enough talent there. There's enough of a distraction, too, to go, this is the guy that we're going to give the keys to for at least this season. Let's see how it shakes out. This is a calculated risk, which I actually like from Cleveland.
I don't typically end the show teasing something, but I wanted to get to the Giants and all of this because in this mock draft, they aren't taking a quarterback. They're taking Travis Hunter, but I don't have time to talk about it. So we'll talk about that tomorrow. Bram, watch the show, ESPN 630, the Sports Capital.